Hello, bros. We're back with Frank Leslie's Christmas book, 1889 to 1890. And we're on chapter 2 of Bonny's Fortunes. Beazles and Window Trains. Bonny's mother had been an invalid ever since he was born, so poor Bonny, who had neither brothers nor sisters, was left a great deal to himself. His father was out all day, and when he came home in the evening, either shut himself up with his books or went and talked with his wife in her room. He was a quiet, grave, stern man. Twice a day, Bonny was taken into the dining room to see his father, but he did not much enjoy these visits, when he was obliged to be quiet and had nothing to amuse him. Mr. Cameron was not sorry to get the visit over. He knew very little of children and expected that when Bonny began to talk, he would give rational answers to simple questions and show an interest in anything he told him. Bonny, on the other hand, talked very indistinctly and showed very little sense. Mr. Cameron was not amused, as most people are, by the silly, inconsequent chatter of a small child. It rather irritated him, and Bonny seemed particularly stupid. He was fond of staring in his father's face and asking, "What?" a great many times. The only servants of the household were old Mary, whose time was much taken up with her invalid mistress, and a boy who helped downstairs in the morning. Mary looked after Bonny's needs conscientiously, but she had little time to spare to play with him, so that altogether it was a dull life that the child led. But he amused himself so well, upstairs in his old nursery that no one thought he was at all miserable or unhappy. And Mary quite believed that he liked playing by himself far better than he would care to have other children with him, and she always told her mistress so. Just now Bonny's mother was very ill, and Mr. Cameron had sent for his sister to come and stay with her till some other nurse could be had. As soon as she found an opportunity, she went up to the nursery to take a peep at the little nephew she had not seen since he was a baby. He took no notice whatever of the visitor standing in the doorway, but went on playing with a solemn and intent face. Mrs. Giles stood and watched. The room was in a terrible disorder. All the chairs were laid down on the floor long ways and put together in squares. The high guard had been dragged away from the fireplace and laid across a recess, leaving only just a little aperture at which to go in and out. The table was pushed into another corner with the cloth all hanging down at the back, and kept so by the few articles left from Bonny's breakfast, a lump or two of coal, and some broken toys. Bonny was crawling about the floor. First he went into one little chair house, where he sat for a while grunting and squeaking. Then he crawled out again, then into another, where he growled and paced backward and forward with an angry face. Presently an idea seemed to strike him, for he took 3 chairs and with many struggles piled them up, one on top of another in a corner. Then he began climbing up them in a very cat-like fashion. But presently one came toppling down, rolling Bonny over onto the floor. He did not utter a sound, but picked himself up and began again, and at last, by the aid of another chair and the fire guard, stood on the topmost one, leaning against the wall. He looked all round with a kind of fixed stare, and presently his eyes lighted on his aunt. He did not smile or move, but only kept his eye fixed on her for several seconds with a perfectly blank, expressionless stare. Then he carefully descended from his height and began crawling again on the floor. His aunt was a little amused, but more frightened. She had never seen much of children, but she was fond of them and a favorite with many she knew. However, she had yet to make friends with Bonny, so she went into the room and called him to her. He paused a moment on all fours, turned his head round and looked at her. Then he went on with his game. "Look here, Bonny," she said, dragging him up in her arms. I want to talk to you. What? I want to talk to you. I am Aunt Lucy, and I have something nice in this little bag for you. Bonny eyed the bag very solemnly. In fact, he had never smiled once since his aunt had seen him. I'll be all the Beazles. I'll be all the Beazles, he said, and then I'll tell you. Did they be nice Beazles? Yes, they was very nice Beazles. Bonny likes 'em. So he slipped away down on the floor again and went the whole round of dens until he came to the pyramid of chairs. He was very solemn over it all and never hurried himself. When he had stared at his aunt for about 2 minutes, he descended and came back to her. What is that game you have been playing, Bonny? She asked. It's Beazle's game. Gain, he said, staring up in her face with very round, bead-like eyes. Beazles in the zoo, lions, tigers, bears. She growls like this and climbs up a pole. One Beazle hops about all funny like this. He carries a tiny with him and pokes its head out. Did I go and see him? Yes, I did see him, I tell you. Was it a kangaroo, Bonny? What? A kangaroo. Was that the name of the beast that carried a tiny baby in its pouch? Yes, he was Camroo, baby Camroo. That's what I tell you. There's Bonny. He stopped when he saw the figure of a child. Oh, this is C, page 60. Why would I see page 63, buddy? Why wouldn't you put this illustration at page 63? We'll get to that point. It's called a spoiler. Well, said his aunt to herself, this is a very noticing little boy, although he talks indistinctly and is not well-mannered. It was time, she thought, to bring the cakes out of her bag now. Bonny was much delighted with them, although he did not say, thank you. Cake for Camroo, he asked. Yes, if you like. Then I'm Camroo, so I'll eat him. Camroo likes cakes, he'd do that. You've got a clock. Let me see him. He pointed to his aunt's watch chain. She took out her watch to show him. He looked at it for some minutes intently. Then he said, Old Nan, doctor, have a clock. She pull out clock and say, Bonny, look at my clock. Bonny like clock. She look at it very hard. Then old man doctor, he take out little knife and stick in Bonny's neck. I very angry. It old Nan doctor. Very angry. It old Nan doctor's clock. Very angry. I'd little knife. I'm going to stick little knife in old Nan doctor Sunday. That's what I tell you. The doctor did it to make you well, Bonny, she said. He stick knife in me. I'll stick knife in him some Sunday. I will, Bonny persisted. He's such a spiteful child, chimed in Mary, who just then pushed open the door. Old Nan doctor spiteful, said Bonny. Don't stand staring at me like that, Master Bonny. Now don't put on that face. Do you hear, Master Bonny? Leave off, I tell you, at once. But Bonny stared all the harder, and Mary's face grew cross too. You've got a spiteful face. You make an angry fallhead, too, at me. She is, he said, turning to his aunt. Look at Lolly. She is make angry fallhead, isn't she? She's a spiteful boy, I tell you. Mary was certainly frowning vigorously. It was time for Mrs. Giles to go back to the sick room. So she told Bonny she would come and see him again by and by. And wherever you lay dinner for me, lay it for Bonny too, she said to Mary. It must be very dull for him up here. Lord, ma'am, he don't care about no companions. He likes being alone best, Mary replied. Mrs. Giles doubted that and was confirmed in her doubt when Bonny came running to the top of the stairs and called after her, You come again soon, do you hear I tell you? Meanwhile, Bonny played at Beazles for a long time and then went and looked out at the window to see if the little girl would come to the window and look out too, but she did not. So he started another game. Presently, his Aunt Lucy came running upstairs. Bonny, dear, you mustn't make such a noise. It hurts Mother's head. The chairs were in requisition again. They were lying all about the room. It's a window train, Bonny said eagerly. He's tumbled down, he has, and killed all the peoples. Faver said he did. I'm the people's, and I'm buried dead. What a little actor you are, Bonnie. Do you make everything you hear about into a game? Yes, I do, he replied at last. I make it into a game. I do. It's a window train game. That's what it is. Why a window train, Bonnie? Because what? That's what Lally says. He says, because that's all. It's rude to ask questions. Aunties may ask questions. Then children can too. Will you let me ask questions? Yes, as many as you like, when I have time to answer them. Think of plenty for me. Now you tell me what I asked you. What you said then. Why do you call it a window train? She hasn't got coals in him, has she? Coals don't look out of windows, do they? People's lookout window. It isn't a coal train. She's a window train. Coals isn't killed. People is killed and dreaded when train tundles down. So she's a window train, didn't I tell you? I understand perfectly now, said his aunt, who was beginning to comprehend his strange jumble of words. You didn't stand before I told you. Then you're a stupid. Oh, that was not very pretty, Bonnie. You must not play at window trains anymore today. Make another game and I will come and see it presently. But instead, Bonnie went and looked out of the window. While he stood staring, a man stood still in the street a short distance off and kept on passing a long thing he held in one hand, backward and forward over something he held, resting on his shoulder in the other hand. It was what he had seen the gentleman doing, Bonnie felt sure, but the man's back was turned to him, and Bonnie screwed his head about in vain to see all the man was doing. He heard faint sounds like music, he thought, and he put his ear down against the window pane to hear more. Bonnie grew very excited about it and watched and waited for the man to come nearer, instead of which he slipped round the corner and disappeared. Then Bonnie lay down on the floor and rolled over and over in a rage. Then he took a wooden box and the poker and tried to imitate the man. He went on doing this a very long time. What are you up to now? Mary asked when she came to fetch him down to dinner. What Nan do this for? Bonnie asked. Goodness knows, Master Bonnie, I never saw any man do that. Nan do it. Did I seen her do it? Yes, I did see him, I tell you. Don't you talk nonsense, Master Bonnie, and come along. Bonnie followed sulkily. Suddenly, an idea came to him. He flew downstairs so fast that Mary could not follow. She called to the child to come back, but he took no heed of her. The dining room door was flung wide open, and in burst Bonnie. Down he went under the table and fished out a hassock, seized the poker, and began his strange pantomime in front of his auntie. Nan do this, he cried. Nan do this. What Nan do it for? I expect he was playing a violin, his aunt said, smiling. Eh, what? He said, coming nearer and staring eagerly into her face. He did it to get music out of it, like they play a piano, you know. He had never seen a piano, for there was not one in the house, so he did not understand. Do it sing, like the church? Is it a nice noise what little angels come and sing to Bonnie when he's asleep, is it? Yes, dear, that's what it is for. But I can't hear any nice music. Where's ever gone? His aunt explained it to him. Poor Benny was very disappointed. He thought drawing anything across another thing would make nice music. What a deal he had to learn. He amused himself all the afternoon in playing with the box and the poker, although no sound came out of it. He leaned his head down on the box, just as he had seen the man do, and very likely he imagined the music. Anyway, he was happy and did not want to go down to tea at first. But when his aunt came up to fetch him, Benny went at once. She could not give much time to him, for she had come to nurse her sister-in-law. During the few days she had to spare away from her country home, where she kept a school, but she was growing interested in the strange boy and wished she could stay longer. And in the house opposite, the little girl was lying in the back bedroom, ill, and she said to the kind friend who was nursing her, for it was not her own home, have you seen that funny little boy with the sad face that stared at us so? Sometimes the answer was no, and sometimes yes. Lise, the little girl, asked very often about him. I think he is a very lonely child, the lady said. I've noticed him standing at the window hour after hour all alone. He goes out sometimes for a walk with an old servant, but he never runs about and plays like other children. Oh, poor little fellow, couldn't you ask him to tea one day? When you are quite well again, Lise, we must see if we can think of some excuse for calling. You see, I do not know his parents at all, not even their name. Lise, who was a little German girl, they called her named Lisa, gave an odd little German exclamation of impatience. It was a long time to wait when she wanted to see the little boy at once, that very day. Mrs. Giles only stayed the 3 days and then went away. Bonny missed her at mealtimes and those little flying visits she used to pay to the nursery, but he was looking out for the man with the music, so he didn't mind much. One day, when he looked out of the window, there was the man at the corner house. Bonny's face became all aglow with excitement, but the man had just done playing, and he put his music in a box and went away round the corner. Bonny could not bear it. He had waited so long to see that man with the music. He flew downstairs, fumbled at the door handle until it came undone, was down the steps like lightning, and the next moment was out in the road. This is one of the better stories I've ever read. Little Bonny. This kid's fucking brilliant. All right, Brobs. That's all. I don't know what this has to do with Christmas, but that's all, Brobs. Good boy.